I don't share much about PeopleRain with our community, but I'm going to break protocol. PeopleRain is the product version of the ethos behind this great Team Human community. Our team is passionate about giving the next billion employees back 4 to 6 hours of productive time per week. Hundreds of organizations around the world trust PeopleRain to automate work because it's the safest, most trustworthy, and smartest way to automatically execute thousands of common IT and HR tasks. Consider it the antidote to AI that's either creepy or that poses a threat to human jobs. I'm hosting a live webcast where I will show a demo of agentic AI in action. Register for the webcast at peoplerain.io. That's people, reign like the reign of a queen or king.io. Now back to this week's amazing episode.
Yo, it's the future, don't hit the snooze. AI is here giving humans the boost. Team Humans rolling, brains in the game with Dan Turchin. Y'all remember the name. People reign in the mix, no stopping the flow. Better work, better life, yeah, we're ready to go. Robots and humans, a collab, you know. Okay, let's start the show.
My name is Christine Yen. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Honeycomb. We help engineering teams understand what the heck their software is doing, which is a problem that I think started when we started writing code for other people's machines and is only being exacerbated by agents entering the equation and helping generate code for us. I think my personal background is as a developer, where I started caring about observability because I was an engineer introducing change into a system, and my ops counterpart would come across the room and say, "What did you do to my system?" And I think the motivating factor for both of us, she's my co-founder now, motivating factor for both of us has been, how do we help everyone on that engineering team come together around a source of truth, which is, how is it impacting the end user?
And if I recall, you were building products early at Facebook. Right?
That's right. We met at a startup that was building a mobile backend as a service that was bought by Facebook.
Yeah, okay.
And then we continued to build that. Correct. Yeah. So we continued to build that at Facebook. And there we're exposed to a set of internal tools that were, most of which weren't applicable. Turns out, something that's meant for the largest PHP application, monolithic PHP application at the time, maybe not applicable to a polyglot, multi-tenant, distributed PaaS. But there was this thing that made a set of trade-offs where we were like, this is like logs, but faster, and like metrics, but more flexible, all in the same tool. And when we thought about leaving Facebook, we were like, we don't want to leave. We don't ever want to build a complex system again without it. And that led to us starting Honeycomb and trying to bring it to the rest of the world.
When I first got started we didn't call it observability then. We kind of called it monitoring, cloud monitoring. Code was different. Developers were different. Software was different. We've all kind of had to reinvent ourselves the last couple of years. What does that look like for you in Honeycomb to build observability for a whole different ecosystem of technology?
Yeah. I mean, I know I am in startups because I get bored easily, and I am very afraid of being bored. And so this moment of this rate of change and kind of the moment that we're in, certainly not boring. So I'm personally having a lot of fun. And what is great sort of at the Honeycomb level is Charity and I have always been, Charity's my co-founder, we were brought together by this idea of different perspectives trying to make sense of what the heck the software is doing. And that's something that is, you take that ethos, bringing production and development closer together, and you carry it forward. And that holds true whether it's humans authoring the code, agents authoring the code, whether it's humans or agents or both debugging that code. I think this acknowledgement that we are building for teams of mixed perspectives is actually carries really well forward into an agentic era where now the code, we think the code never really was the source of truth. A lot of folks treat the code as like, this is the truth of what's going on. Our thesis is always, you can only test in production. That was true in the cloud era, we believe. In the AI era, that's even more true. No one is reading the code anymore. No one is laboriously building a mental model of what the code is supposed to do. You can only observe the outcomes and be really intentional about what should the code be doing? What does good look like? How do we notice when reality deviates from our expectations? I think because we've always felt this core imperative so deeply in our bones, and always been so interested in that intersection between technology and how people use it, the socio-technical interface, um, it means that, as these techniques and tools and technologies swap out, we get to just keep sort of working this problem with newer and better tools to attack it with.
Do agents writing code make for more code in the aggregate, more better code, more worse code?
Yes, to all of the above, right? The same way humans wrote bad code, humans wrote great code. I think the only thing that we can agree on is that there's more of it. And more of it equals more chaos equals the attempt to hold all of a system in your head was futile to begin with. Now, things like SLOs, things like observability driven development, if very few people were actually doing that, but if you were, or, I think what we're seeing right now is the entire software development lifecycle just being compressed and mashed together. I was talking to someone earlier today where they were like, there's not going to be PMs, designers, and engineers anymore. They're just builders. And even in that language is the smushing of responsibilities. And I think part of that smushing, observability, testing, synthetics, all of that is going to get smushed into how do you validate your code? What does that mean? Well, it just means what do you expect it to do? And how do you make sure it does that? And when you can express it in this very simple language, it focuses the goal on the outcomes, not, monitoring versus observability versus, some other term, slap fights. I don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. Let's figure out how we move faster and make sure what comes out is still good.
There's this paradox in modern software development that goes something like this. The AI that wrote the code can't also be the AI that monitors or observes the code.
Yeah.
What's Christine's view of that?
I think that's true. The same way a human that wrote the code is probably not the best judge of whether it's A, good, or B, correct. And I'm overweight. It will sound perhaps at this moment that I'm overweighting the concept of SLOs, but I keep using it as this example of, for any listeners who aren't familiar, SLO stands for service level objectives. And it is a methodology that can be translated to tools popularized by Google's SRE organization around this idea of defining what good service looks like. And starting from, again, plain English. And the intent there, the intent there and the hard work are the humans having that conversation ahead of time. What does good look like? This should be something that's agreed upon by, I don't know, again, pre-AI world. I'm going to use pre-AI titles. The engineer and the product manager, and maybe someone in biz dev, these people should agree on what good service looks like. And then engineering can build to that. And that sort of becomes the spec and the interface into the engineering work. What I like about that is that is an example of capturing something that becomes objective, taking something very subjective, making it objective, making it measurable. And then, whether it's humans or AIs building against that, you now have this standard that you all can agree on and measure. And if, you drop below some threshold of service, you can then debug and act. And I think that there are plenty of vendors here who will try to sell you an adversarial AI to pair with your generative AI. And maybe, but I think even under that adversarial AI has to be those conversations, that objective standard. And once you have that, then who cares what the implementation is? You need to find some way to measure the quality of your code against that.
This is a soft question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I'm sure answer. So as life is infiltrated by technology, it has already. It will be even more in the future. Our aging parents will rely on technology for monitoring their health, and technology drives us around, and it will we are surgeons and right. I mean, really like life impacting stuff.
Yeah.
Measuring, monitoring the quality of that technology that has these really like, life impacting implications will get more important. So I said softball question, but would love to get your perspective on, where Honeycomb goes when it's that important, the stuff that you're doing.
It's funny that you're calling that a softball question because it's such heavy material. I'll say maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, logging, monitoring, APM, these tools were often very focused on really granular aspects of a system. How's my disk space doing? How's CPU utilization? Is the throughput on this endpoint within what it bounds? Really very much looking at individual parts of the proverbial elephant. And a thing that has happened in the last few years that I think is really positive is elevating that question that we're asking. Instead of here's a small facet of the system, is it operating within bounds? It is learning to ask, how is the system operating and how is it serving the needs of my customers? One of the things my co-founder loves to say is nines don't matter if your users aren't happy, right? Some minuscule aspect of your system performance does not matter if it's not, safely driving on the streets, or if it's not, correctly handling home care for a patient. And I think that trajectory of us as technologists being able to see that bigger picture and connect some aspect of the code or software or system to the impact that we're hoping to drive, I hope that trajectory continues. I think it has to continue. And honestly, I think a lot of the smushing that I'm describing is going to help that. And that's exciting to me because we as technologists are going to have to focus more on that, on the outcomes, on the overall picture instead of, I built this little cool thing. Don't you see how cool it is? Let's enjoy the technology for the sake of it.
Related question. We're allowed to geek out here a little bit.
Great.
So traditional telemetry that we would collect, traces and alerts and time series data, et cetera, I'd argue is probably sufficient for an older world, but we're probably going to need to evolve. What does that new kind of stack of telemetry look like that we're siphoning off of, just for a lazy term, but kind of AI first applications?
Yeah, I think, I have been in this space and both as a user and vendor for too long to be able to credibly make claims about dramatic shifts in the types of telemetry we use. There's a real gravity to data, and I think everyone is looking at the types of telemetry that are being emitted by their systems and trying to figure out how to evolve it, not replace it wholesale or refactor it wholesale. But I think some truths to how things are going to evolve. One, I think data types are going to have to be really expressive. Part of this is the non-determinism of the systems itself. Like, you don't know what's going to go into some unexpected behavior. You better capture all the metadata that went into possibly making a decision that led to that. It also, you on both sides, you want to capture it at that point, and then you need to be able to arm an agent or a human or whatever investigative force to have all of that available so that you can find correlations after the fact. I think that relationships are going to be really important. If you think about sort of logs to traces, lots of people like to talk about those as separate things. I think of traces as log lines that are tied together by a trace ID, right? You have their log lines, there's some structure, and then you have sort of the tree hierarchy that renders a trace waterfall. I think that was a layer of relationship. As you think about long-lived agents and loops and the autonomous agentic workflows that we're now talking about, again, those are just, you can use the same building blocks, but the relationships become more complex. It's going to be traces tied together or spanning out. And I think there's a real temptation for us as technologists to think about and to nerd out about the telemetry And I've seen so many people get sort of derailed talking about telemetry and needing to be reoriented to what are you trying to do with it? How do you know what's good? Let's talk first about what signal you're trying to measure. Then we'll figure out the telemetry to get there. But, I think, again, one thing that's undeniable, the watchword is more. There's more of everything. More code, more telemetry. And that is going to put stress on systems that maybe weren't even built for the cloud era, and are going to have to scale to meet today's AI data needs.
One of the things we talk a lot about on this podcast, but in this community, it's responsible AI. And I'd love to know from your perspective as CEO, what does that mean to you, and how do you kind of operationalize those, a set of principles in your organization?
That's a great question. I think that companies have, for a long time, held a practice of defining values for the company, right? This is how we should interact with each other as people. This is how we, how we should approach our work. I think that Honeycomb is working on formalizing, and I think many companies are going to have to define what are our AI values. The same way, there are guidelines and expectations about how you treat your human coworkers. There should be some accepted guidelines on how to engage agentic workers, on how to present or challenge or engage with work produced by those agents. Maybe there'll be a world when there's sufficient societal norms. Chances are most companies, I can't just walk in and, I don't know, stab someone. Like, that's just pretty universally accepted.
You went there.
Yeah. That's sufficiently accepted on a society level that no company has to embed that in their values. I think that will eventually happen with AI work. Right now, I think it's really useful for companies to think about, if someone is presenting a deck that Claude helped them build, what level of disclosure, if any, is necessary? What level of editing, if any, was necessary? How should people think about human attention on the other side? If I'm able to produce a 16-page document with AI, that's wonderful. Is it responsible for me to put that on your desk and expect you to read it with your human eyeballs? Or actually is it an expectation that you are going to use your agent to parse it for your human brain? I don't know. Those are norms that are going to have to be set by each company right now. And I think that there are going to be a lot of edge cases where there's irresponsible use of AI. I think that we're already starting to see in the headlines some examples of inflated promises. And I think that's sort of it is a shame, but also a natural part of us as a society and industry figuring out how to incorporate these new tools in a responsible and ethical way.
I think we need to make that the topic of a whole other conversation that we have. This is just a short conversation, but I like that.
It's meaty.
You clearly care about that, and you're way ahead of most in your thinking.
Oh, well,
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I got to get you off the hot seat because Rachel's going to cane you off the stage if I don't wrap us up.
Yo, it's the end of the show. Time to power it down. AI's the sis, but humans wear the crown. Team Human in the house, got the vibe so clever. Dan Turchin from People Brain, making us better. We learned about AI for humans. We're ready to conquer the future. That's all for now. See you next time.